Hello and welcome to the Irn-Cru podcast. It's an NFL podcast made in Scotland and Canada by NFL lovers. You're listening to and watching the Review Crew. And I'm your host, Stuart, the conscience of Cincinnati. I don't need to say that. I'm just making fun of Brian because he's not here. He's actually off in his darkness retreat. But anyway, week 6. We're there. We're already like at week 6 in week 6 in the season. Another fantastic weekend of football. And I, unlike one member of our panel, Gav, name and name, very happy that we're enjoying a Victory Monday. There's not been many for me this season, so I am fully enjoying it. It's also Thanksgiving here in Canada, so I am giving thanks for Chase Brown, our Canadian member of the Bengals, Tanner McLachlan as well, but he wasn't playing. They brought out the victory last night, and here we are. We're rolling into Monday. So, guys, how you doing? Gav, I'll come to you first.
Really good. I mean, I think certainly you've kind of alluded to it already. Sunday night football did not go the way I wanted to, and obviously we'll get onto that later on. But no, it's been a really good weekend of football of all sorts for me. So you might have seen if you follow us on socials, Dan and I were hosting the Scotland under-19s match at Meggetland in Edinburgh against Team North. We had a 17-10 win for the Scottish boys. Fantastic result, big crowd. I think it was up over 500 people there. So, really great atmosphere. They had the Stockbridge Pipe Band introducing the teams that they came out. The Team North guys brought a fantastic support up from down south, from our perspective down south anyway. Really great day of football, turnovers, touchdowns, field goals on both sides as well, which is, great to see. You've got the kicking game. I know you love a kicker, Stu. And then, on to today. This is actually my second pod of the day, so I'll go back behind the curtain. Special Crew episode 3 has been recorded this afternoon, myself and Dan, and actually tomorrow, you and I, Stu, are back in the studio tomorrow night for another recording. So obviously we've got our regular review and preview crews going on, but actually we've got quite a few bits of extra content dropping over the next week or so. So yeah, really exciting times. So yeah, keep following us on the socials to see the updates on that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic because I was watching all the stories yesterday when you guys were at the games, and it's always good to see because that's something I enjoy here in Canada is like going and checking out, some of that, like either the youth sports, so like college level football, and then as well, like I have McNally High School over here, so I get to they're the McNally Tigers as well, so they even play in Bengals kind of style helmets, which is always nice to see, and it's good just to see that like who's coming through the system and all that. Now, one other thing we should probably announce as well is we actually have a watch-along party coming up. It's our first ever one. Unfortunately, I'll not be there because I'm not going to be able to fly out from Canada in time. I do have my youngest kid's birthday that same weekend, so I'm kind of prior engagement. But we have our watch-along party, our Red Zone watch party at committee room number 9 in Glasgow. Like well-known, great place to watch football and all that. So it's happening on Sunday, the 27th of October. 3:30 p.m. until late. So if you go to any kind of our social media, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram, you'll find the link to buy tickets there. But yeah, there'll be a bunch of folk from the crew will be there. Kev, I'll come to you now. How are you doing this week? And are you going to be there at the watch party?
I'm good, Stu. Thanks. I fully intend to be at the watch party. I'm looking forward to it. You should just mention that the tickets are free. So the link to obtain a ticket is free to come along. So hopefully see plenty of folk at that. And really good weekend of football. It's interesting to see how the divisions are all shaping up. I think we're starting to get a kind of picture of how it's all going to pan out now. So really, really fun weekend.
Yep, no, definitely, it's been good. And Keith, the man of the hour from Philippines, how are you getting on? Because I understand you must be extremely delighted. You've been watching your Bears grow, like go from strength to strength. Like the rebuild seems to be coming along much quicker than anybody thought. It's like Grant, Grant who used to podcast, him from. was going to say, like Grant throwing up an extension for his house. So how are you doing, Keith? Oh, we might be getting a bit of technical difficulties here. So Keith, when you just get a chance, like maybe kind of chime in. It's jumping on us a little bit. Keith, I don't know if you can still hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. No, just asking how you're getting on and how you found this weekend with the Bears and the London game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the game. I've watched like every game so far this season, and it's just like an improvement from one game to the next. And I expect it kind of still to go that way, but I'm kind of tempering the enthusiasm. We know that's the easier part of the schedule, and the expectations are, 9-8, 10-7, maybe an outside chance of the playoffs. That's kind of way I've getting set up in my head, so I'm not expecting to storm the North or anything this season.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, we'll dig into how the North is doing as we make our way through the games here. But for me, I just think it's kind of all been up arrows for Mr. Williams since weekend. He just seems to be showing like everything you'd want to see from a rookie quarterback in terms of improvement game to game. So you can only beat what's in front of you, and he's doing it.
Exactly.
Yep. So, anyways, let's start jumping into the games that the games that have happened this week. So, heading all the way back to Thursday night, we're going to head back to the Niners playing against the Seahawks in Seattle. Gav, did you see much of this game, or what were your big takeaways from it?
Yeah, so this was actually, I know we always talk about sleepless in Seattle, guys, sleepless in Scotland actually, and the smaller hours of Friday morning. So I did actually watch most of this game live, and I think you'd say, from my perspective, the result was pretty much what I expected to see. I know that the 49ers have had a slow start to the season, but for me, I think the Seahawks were starting to see that they are who we thought they were. And yes, they did start 3-0. I think once you start to look at who they beat to get to 3-0, in Bonix's debut game, the Panthers and the Patriots, that actually it's not that much to write home about, especially in the first 3 weeks of a season. So yeah, as much as it's a great win for the Giants on the road there last week, I'm quite realistic about perhaps the level of opposition that we're playing. I don't think that's to take anything away from the Niners, who did have a good game. They also came out fast. And what we absolutely saw from the Niners, I think this game is this next man up mentality. So, this is going back years. The run game in particular for the 49ers, it just seems to be plug and play. Obviously, this year they've had Christian McCaffrey goes down, and Jordan Mason's been the guy to actually step into the void and do a great job. He was doing really well in the first half, but picked up a few knocks. I think he came in for one play at the start of the second, and then jumped out. But then again, you're into your fourth and fifth string running backs, and even then, they're still carrying the rock for you and doing a great job. Probably I guess if you were a 49ers fan watching live, your concern would have been that the Seahawks did start to creep back into the game, and closing games out has been a challenge for the 49ers over the course of this season. Of course, we saw the loss to the Cardinals and the Rams, both games that jump out there. But this is one that we're able to see it through and reasonably comfortably in the end. So despite all the panic, the 49ers are now atop the NFC West. They've had stumbles in the previous few years and kicked on. And I think for me, they remain the team to beat in the West.
Yeah, no, Gav, I think that's fair. That's kind of like my view on the Niners is kind of pretty well known. Like I'm a big fan of Brock Purdy. And I also just would love the Bengals to somehow face the Niners in a Super Bowl at some point and maybe complete the trilogy and actually win one of them for once, because our previous two Super Bowl losses, we've lost the Rams as well recently, but our 1980s Super Bowl losses were both to the Joe Montana-led 49ers. Kev, on the night or on the Seahawks side of the ball, though, like obviously, Gav alluded to it there. They started 3-0, and then the wheels seem to have come off a bit. But what could you say is positives from what you saw from the Seahawks, and like what they can maybe cling on to in that hope, like moving forward?
I think, like you say, they they didn't give up. They hung in there. They tried to fight back. I think Geno Smith's had another incredible start to the season. He's playing really well. And I think they've come up against a really good team in the 49ers. So you've just got to put that one to bed, move on, and just keep trying to do the things that they've been doing well through the first 5 weeks of the season. I do think that they're probably going to be a sort of middle of the road team, the Seahawks this year. I think they are going to struggle to win consistently because they'll come up against better sides. But yeah, they're going about their business the right way.
Yep, no, for sure. Like for me, like just can also looking at the game, like at the stats at a glance. Obviously, it finished 36-24. The big thing for me, and I always love banging on about this, time of possession. I honestly feel like it's everything in the NFL, like even much more so than what it would be in football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, kind of thing back home. So the Niners, 33 minutes, or 33.05 minutes of possession. Seahawks 26.95. It's just when you have that kind of difference, and then 9 penalties for the Seahawks, 5 for the Niners as well. If you're not getting the time of possession and you're also kind of giving up more, like almost twice as many penalties as the other team, then you're probably going to struggle to win. So that's one thing I think the Seahawks need to do is maybe let's look at tamping down the penalties a little bit moving forward. But yeah, for me, Geno's been good so far. So if he just keeps doing what he's doing, they will have a chance, especially when they play some of the lesser lights of the league. But I know looking at the forecast for the Seahawks going forward, they do have a pretty tough row to hoe this year. So we'll see. But, I have them as they're a decent side, so we'll see how they go. Now, moving on from the Niners and Seahawks, we're going to go to one of the feature games of the week. And I'm going to come to Keith here to talk a little bit about his Bears. They were in London to play against the London/Jacksonville Jaguars. So, Keith, you obviously watched this game. What did you make of it? What were your big takeaways for the Bears?
I think that it was just like a natural progression from where they've been playing weeks 1 to 5. Offensively, everything just gets incrementally a little bit better. I think the offensive lines come together a bit more. Obviously, the first quarter was a little shaky, but we've started slow in every game. I think we only scored one touchdown in the first quarter so far this season. So it's like the 15 scripted plays don't always work particularly well. But generally, so offensively, everything's just been getting that little bit better as like Keenan Allen's come back to health as well. DeAndre Swift's kind of, the light's gone on for him. So everything just kind of clicks that little bit more, and you can see the progression and improvement in Caleb Williams every week. He looks completely in command. He looks like a veteran kind of quarterback, the way he kind of controls the huddle, line of scrimmage, his decision-making. You can see it with his eyes and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's just like when national audiences get to see him, then they kind of jump in. It's like, well, from what they were saying the first couple of weeks, because Jaden Daniels was playing well, it's like a complete about face. But that's just the way the media is. They just jump onto everything now, and everything's either the best ever or the worst ever. So, I mean, it's a really, really good progression, and he's on. I know the bar is very, very low, but he's on track for beating all kinds of like Bears rookie records already. Yep. I think like the number of touchdowns is 11, so he's got 9, and so in the passing yards it's just over 2,000 and stuff. So there's pretty low bar to try and beat there. And then defensively, we're always good as well, and dealing with some absences in the secondary in this game, still managed to hold up pretty well. I thought it was going to be a bit of a potential shootout, quite high scoring. Yep. If just based on having seen the Jaguars the previous week against the Colts, but the Bears were able to make them pretty one-dimensional quickly. And once we're kind of in front, you never felt as if there was any alarm. So I think the Jaguars will be, obviously the record, they're in a bit of trouble. Can't imagine that spending another week in London just cooped up in a hotel somewhere is going to be great for morale or anything like that. And how Doug Peterson's like, we need to change the culture now. I don't think culture is something you switch off and on like that, and you can just change in an instant. So yeah, a bit of trouble for them, but generally really happy with how it turned out. There are bigger challenges to come, but you beat what's in front of you. As I know this from the Jimmy Thielen era, is that you can only beat what's in front of you. You start the season well.
Yep, no, that's totally it. Like, yeah, like I was just going to come across there to Gav. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about. Well, Keith alluded to it there. He kind of touched on the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence, because he was coming off last week where I think he broke like the Jaguars in-game record, or at least his own personal most passing yards in a game kind of thing. So there was a lot of high hopes for him coming into this game. Like, what did you make of his play, and then just I guess the Jags as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one where if you were to look at the box score, and admittedly, my eyes, yes, the afternoon when the action a bit closer to home, but Trevor Lawrence, throws 23 of 35 for 234 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. It's an okay game. It's certainly not outstanding, but it's not disastrous. I think we kind of talked about that expectation there, where you're perhaps looking at this game as being a shootout, and I think that's one of the problems that the Jags faced, is that actually we're seeing a Chicago Bears team that is now starting to click. As Keith mentioned, I think it was week 1 where the Bears really were pulled through by the defense against the Titans. Caleb Williams didn't have to do very much. In some of these early games, he really didn't show all that much. But to what you were saying, Keith, about the media and these stories, we seem to fluctuate between expecting the world from a number 1 pick straight away to then saying, well, actually, should every team be doing the Packers model, sitting out a quarterback for 2 years and seeing what happens? So actually, I think we sometimes forget that, yes, the Bears had the number 1 pick, but they were not the worst team in the league last year. There were some good elements already in place, and now you start to add in the rookies like Caleb Williams, like Rome Odunze, who again has had a quiet start, but now you're starting to see some of these pieces tick up. Obviously, you mentioned Keenan Allen. That's something that I've, in fantasy world, did not remain patient with. And there you go, 2 touchdown game, getting over his injury issues. And you're now looking at that as part of a division where I know we'd said before that we kicked off, every team in that division is at least 2 games over 500. And that includes the Bears, who I think because of that slow start, all of the preseason hype quietened down very quickly. And we want to manage our expectations a bit, but actually it's definitely a side that I think we all want to be keeping our eye on again.
Yeah, and I was just going to say there as well, because we just had a message in about DeAndre Swift, saying how Studs' message in there saying, Swift put the Bears on his back. And I probably should have a bit of a Swift apology moment here, because not that I've ever dragged them through the mud or anything like that, but I've never really been the biggest Swift believer, shall we say. Like, even when he was with the Eagles and that as well, I kind of felt like a lot of what he was doing was more driven by the O-line. But the last 2 games, he's been over, was he over 100 yards of scrimmage at least? I don't know if he was over 100 for rushing this game. I don't think he was, but yeah, 91 yards rushing, so still close to 100 there, but he was averaging over 5 yards a carry. Scores a touchdown as well, so you know what, the guy's doing it. So Studs, you're right, he's definitely kind of came around, and that's doing it with the Bears O-line, which as much as is definitely improved on last year. I still wouldn't put it in the top 10 in the league quite yet, but definitely given Mr. Williams time to throw the ball yesterday, which was good too.
I think another thing to remember with these guys is as well with the rookie quarterbacks, like Caleb Williams is 22.
Yeah, he's a
You
young
know,
boy.
think of that in like any kind of like football terms, to be the main guy. I mean, quarterback's a big position, like in a lot of sports. Never mind just NFL. Just that's deemed to be the most important position, and with the size of the city that Chicago is, and the media scrutiny and so on, for all that on the shoulders of a guy who's 22, I think it's amazing. And not just him, just all the other guys that like the rookie quarterback starting at that age, just kind of a wee bit mind blowing when you consider what things are like in other sports.
Yeah, no, that's an important thing to remember. And obviously, as we go through this, we'll get to a few other rookie quarterbacks and how they've been doing.
I just my takeaway for that game though was talk about the Jags and saying how the culture needs to change. I think it highlighted how good the culture is at Chicago. I think that he's been set up to succeed because he's got good experienced players round about him. I think that the big thing for me was how he reacted to the turnover.
Yeah.
So that could have been a bit like a big moment where it shook him a bit, but he just went off, collected himself, and in the next possession he was just back to playing the same as he was for the beginning of the game. So I think that's probably, if I was a Bears fan, the most encouraging thing for that whole game was just how he handled that situation.
Yep, no, that's
excellent. And it was the first thing he mentioned in the post-game interview as well.
Oh yeah,
the interception, and how and it's almost like he does that kind of thing once, I won't do it again, and he's kind of annoyed with himself that he kind of underthrew it and was slightly off in direction as well. So
Sorry, Keith. I think the one thing I was going to say, and this is maybe a question back to you, but I suppose to all of you guys, is the NFL. I mean, we all love a story. What's the headline? What's the takeaway from this? But especially with the London games, the NFL loves to spin a narrative around the international games. I mean, as a Giants fan, the first one in 2007, it was that trip to London really kind of solidified that team to go on a Super Bowl run. And we've seen that happen again and again over the years. This week is the big, or for this particular game, is the story that this is the Caleb Williams coming out party. Is this his big breakout moment, and he's going to kick on from there for not selling Super Bowl, but a big playoff push?
I think so, but just because it gets like national coverage, which is probably, I think the Bears were on, Sunday Night Football against Indianapolis, I think it was.
Yeah.
But also, like, it was just different, like watching Sky Sports coverage and like with Neil Reynolds and Jason Bell and all that, and they were really, really enthusiastic, like incredibly enthusiastic about what Caleb Williams had done. And I think that reading like the national columnists and that, the Bears are getting a bit of a lead in some of the columns and so on. So it's just like, at least he's showing what everybody thought he was potentially capable of. And it's still only 6 games in, so it's good.
He's writing a story, and it's so far it's definitely trending in the right direction, is the way I would put it. But speaking of directions, we should probably summarise that. So Bears obviously won 35-16. As we said, Williams was apart from the interception, he was absolutely lights out, and like you said, he responded to that interception so well. Now we added a message in there as well, just to kind of point out. Remember Sarah from last week? On the preview show, she'd pointed out that where the Jags are falling down, it's some of the play calling as well. And I'll leave you on that point for this game before we head to the Cardinals game. But I would agree. I just think offensively, there's something's not right with the way they're calling things. I don't know how much of it is T-Law's maybe not interpreting it the way he should. Maybe he's second guessing himself now, but he's had good games this year. So, but anyways, moving on.
Any momentum the Jags kind of seem to be getting, they killed themselves with penalties though. I don't know if you've got the penalty stats there, but there was some really ridiculous penalties just at key moments in that game as well for the Jags.
Yeah, they had 8 penalties in total. I don't have the yards that they gave up to that, but the Bears only had 2. So that shows you
Yeah, the Jags had 3 penalties in one drive, I think, when it was 28-10, something like that, I think it was. That, or sorry, I think it was when the Jaguars had just scored again, and then they had 2 penalties that could have got, like the Bears had failed on third down, and it was defensive holders going on that drive.
Yeah, no, that sounds right. Yeah, they were shooting themselves in the foot.
General, like as Kev said, there's a lack of urgency about them.
Yeah, and also because there was I don't know if they had one of the ones where there was the too many men call as well, because didn't they have like they could have got a stop, but they had 12 guys on it. They were playing CFL style, they had 12 men kind of thing on the field at once. But anywho, going from one game where there was one team taking a bunch of penalties to another game where there was a team taking a whole whack load of penalties. The Cardinals were in Green Bay against the Packers. Now, Gav, I don't know if you want to speak a little bit about this here. You could maybe even talk about the Cardinals and their penalty-loving ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of this game, I will say for me, one of the things I adored about this was just actually seeing Jordan Love getting back into a full rhythm. So we'd seen a couple of darts. So I think the one to Romeo Dobbs had made the Dobbs Dubs that had really made the headlines. And the Cardinals, I mean, this was a really, I guess, a disappointing showing from them because, you know, we've seen in their performance against the 49ers just the week before, even if we're not expecting great things from them over the course of the season, we were really looking to have a team that was exciting to watch. And you've obviously kind of called it already. Doing it is a recurring theme in the games we've talked about already. Jacksonville, I think they lost that penalty count 8-2. The Cardinals just 13-5 in the Green Bay game. So you do talk about those key stats, and it's absolutely there, particularly when you're on the road. And when you start going through stats, I mean, I say Jordan Love absolutely balling, but you look at the mistakes that are not going to help you when you're away from home. So penalties, you say 13-5 going against Arizona, but also 3 fumbles lost in that game. So again, just coughing the ball up, giving the ball back to a Green Bay team that has had absolutely no issues taking the ball away early in the season. I think the only surprise Xavier McKinney's streaks come to an end. But yeah, just I guess a real step backwards from a team that if they've not looked dominant, they've looked resilient and exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like looking at stats for Kyler, because you talked about there was the 3 fumbles, like the turnovers there. Kyler Murray's like stats himself, like 22 of 32, 214 yards, touchdown, QBR like of over 100, 103.8. He had a fairly decent game, kind of thing on the other side of the ball, but it was literally just the fumbles and all the penalties were what seemed to be killing it. And then Jordan Love, 22 of 32. Identical completion rate, but the difference for him was 4 touchdowns in one. So he actually threw an interception as well, the same as Caleb Williams did in that last game. But yeah, it was just basically seems to be that the main kind of the problem is the penalties and the turnovers as well. Kev, if you're the Cards, do you take this as a tough loss, or do you say, you know what, we've been building this? We've actually been playing pretty well so far, and how do you view this for your whole kind of map of a season?
I think it's a really tough place to go. The Packers are a really good team. They showed that last year, getting better and better as the year went on and reaching the playoffs. And then obviously, I think the biggest problem that the Cards had in that game was they couldn't move the ball on the ground. I think they had a real lack of the run game. Whether that be Jimmy Connor or even Kyler didn't get much, I think, on the ground in that game. So, the success, the limited success that they did get in the passing game was never going to be enough against Green Bay, with, like you say, with all those penalties and the turnovers.
Yeah, and Keith, just before we move on from this game, speaking of the passing game for the Cardinals as well, the one big bit of news is, like Roma Dunze, there was another very highly thought of wide receiver that was drafted by the Cardinals this year. We saw obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. left the game injured as well. Like, how much of a loss is that for the Cardinals moving forwards?
Yeah, was out with it. I didn't really see much of that game at all. So, whatever was on Red Zone, and wasn't very much because it was a bit one-sided from early doors. I know he was out the game, but I don't really know much more than that.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's a huge blow for the Cardinals if he's out any kind of extended time.
Yeah, it was concussion, wasn't it, Gav?
Right.
As well. So, but yeah, anyway, this one ended 34-13 to the Packers. My one kicker moment for the Packers, though, I think they've missed a field goal in every single one of their games so far. So that's maybe something to watch out with. And no shade to the rookie kind of Narveson, but there's a pattern developing there. So stay tuned and watch on that. Now, moving on to the next game, Kev. This one's for you. It's Eagles versus Browns. Maybe a bit closer than you wanted it to be.
Yeah, and I would love to say, that we're back to the way we were a couple of seasons back, where we're solid and just seem to just be doing enough. But in all honesty, it was a real struggle. I would say that I'm pleased just to get that one out the road, get the win. It's an awkward one because it's one we were expected to win, but at the same time, AJ Brown and DeAndre Smith, have just come back from injuries. We're playing against a team who, can really, on defense, can wreck a game. So just being expected to win, I'm just glad we managed to get it over the line. It wasn't spectacular by any means, but AJ did show some good, some good plays. He made some great catches, looking healthy. So that's encouraging going forward. And I did say a couple of weeks back that I think that we will get better as the season goes on. So like I said, early in the season, still just off a bye. It was a tricky game, but I'm glad we got the win in that. That's really all I've got to say about the match.
Yeah, just happy to get the win. I mean, AJ Brown, he put up 116 yards on 6 receptions, so he definitely looks back in firing on all cylinders. Devonta Smith, 3 receptions for 64 yards, both of them getting some pretty over 40-yard touchdowns as well as part of that. Now, Keith, one thing I was going to ask you there, and maybe I'll put this out to the group too. This is a question we'd had in earlier regarding the T-Law and the Jags, but I actually want to modify it and include Deshaun Watson in this as well. Who has been, and this may be an unfair question now, who has been the worst of the paid quarterbacks? Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, or Deshaun Watson?
Deshaun Watson by to Mars and back.
Yeah.
One of the great joys of watching Red Zone is seeing the Browns fail and watching them fail on third down. And
this is music to my ears as a Bengals fan. I love hearing this because, I mean, we're also not doing so well defensively now, but I love hearing when other people enjoy the Browns failing.
Honestly, I had said at the time when Deshaun Watson signed for the Browns, if my team had done that, if the Bears had signed Deshaun Watson, I would stop supporting them.
Yeah.
Until he was gone. So, yes, Deshaun Watson shouldn't really be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
No. I mean, that's something, Gav, I don't know if you saw some of the press conference from earlier today where Stefanski was essentially, basically, he's backing his guy. I guess that's what he's going to do. But at the same time, he was saying, along the lines of, he's the guy that gives us the best chance to win. There's no way we'd be putting Winston in. Would you agree with that? Or do you feel that maybe, regardless of what the contract is, because that seems to be the excuse that's always thrown around as well, we're paying him so much money, we can't bench him. How do you feel about statements like that, Gav?
Yeah, so I guess I understand the thinking behind that. And to be fair, you do want to, putting Deshaun Watson and his personal and his legal issues to one side, that's normally what you would want in a coach, someone who is going to stand by their guy and back them up. But I think the Browns have a real problem now, and it's not just the 250 million guaranteed, fully guaranteed reasons for backing them up. The problem, as I see it, is that you're now saying that we have to go with them because we've spent all this money, but surely you're just looking worse over the long run by backing them up. And if in the business world, you have this concept of garden leave. You can tell Deshaun Watson, here's a box of your things. You stay home. You might be a player, but you're not playing for us. There comes a point where that needs to become a consideration. And I mean, in my, I guess, idealistic, naive point of view, I'm thinking maybe you can tell this guy, do you see how bad you look? Can we renegotiate this situation? But from his point of view, and I do understand that, don't like the guy.
So to him, it's his money. So
it's fully guaranteed. And if you are guaranteed $250 million, you don't need to worry about how you look. You don't need to worry about your next job, because after this, he never has to work again. Depending how those lawsuits go.
Yes, we'll maybe stay out of that part of the discussion. But
do you think that any of his teammates think that he gives them the best chance to win?
No, I said it last week.
It has to be a huge problem in the locker room.
Yeah, I said it last week. To me, it looks like a lot of his teammates don't want to play with him. The amount how easy defensive lines are getting to him and sacking him, it's like they just don't care, and that's a massive problem, regardless of all the legal stuff and the morality of it all. You've got a guy there who it seems like the team aren't playing for, so you can't play him. Doesn't matter how much money you've guaranteed him, unless you just don't care about winning.
I think money aside, what would really narc me if I'm a Browns fan, and in fact a Browns player, is if you look at a number of these games that the Browns have played this season, their defense is actually doing pretty well. They kept themselves in that game until really late on. Problem is that even at the touchdown they did score, it's Myles Garrett working the magic special teams to keep them.
Yeah. I mean, how much? Because Myles Garrett is like one of the best in the league. Like, how happy is he with this situation? Kind of things. It's like, regardless of how much he likes Cleveland and that's who he's played for so far. Like, eventually you have to think, if he's looking at it as, okay, well, I'm stuck with Deshaun Watson for at least another 2 years, maybe 3. You have to think, like, he's maybe going to start asking. I'm not a fan of people asking out of teams. Like, I hate that personally, but I get it. It happens, and if you want, whether you're getting paid or not, you probably want to win at the end of the day. But
it almost becomes a situation where it's him or me. That's the thought that could go through Garrett's head. And if you're the Browns, if you're the fans, it should be a no-brainer who you want to keep.
Yeah. I mean, I would have him in the Bengals in a heartbeat, and I'm sure, Keith, you'd have him on the Browns, and Kev, even the Eagles' defense has been good for years, but I'm pretty sure you would take Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this game ended 20-16. So Deshaun Watson ran it reasonably close. Somehow managed to get within 4 points of it. And also, oddly, this is one of the few games where the losing team, the Browns, actually had more time of possession than the winning team. So there you go, Kev. There's your Eagles stat for the week. Doing it even when you don't have the ball. Moving on then from that, like, lack of offense to the next two teams. Two of the most potent offenses in the league, the Washington Commanders at the Baltimore Ravens. So we had Lamar, MVP from last year, versus possibly, unless Caleb Williams does continue kind of growing, possibly the Rookie of the Year elect for this year, Jaden Daniels. Gav, did you watch this one, and what did you make of it?
Yeah, I think this one we'd always seen as kind of a barometer game for the Commanders, just in terms of just how good they are. Obviously, the record at 4-2 looks great, but they've not the Commanders do actually have a relatively generous schedule, particularly having finished 4th place last year. So I think this was one of the ones you kind of ringed and thought, actually, this is where we'll see just what the Commanders are all about. And to be fair, this was a reasonably close game. They contended, but they just couldn't keep pace with the Baltimore Ravens. And Jaden Daniels by no means had a bad game, but I think he was certainly contained much more effectively than some of the previous opponents have. No turnovers, so I mean you've got to give some credit in that. But you look at who he's up against. The quarterback play of Lamar Jackson, 323 yards, add another 40 on the ground. And of course, you've got Derrick Henry, 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I think it's what we're seeing there is I guess what Brian would always like to call the fun and frisky team of the year. Really exciting to watch. Jaden Daniels, really exciting player, but coming up against a team that's just that much more established. They know how to win, and they've got the pieces to do it in the Ravens. So there's no shame at all and no alarm bells ring. I think if you are the Commanders, but I think that the Ravens well worth the win yesterday.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think you kind of touched on it there a little bit, but Keith, I don't know if you want to speak to how much do you think the Commanders missed having Brian Robinson in there, because he was obviously injured, and they led their rushing with Austin Eckler.
Yeah, so it's difficult to comment on games I haven't seen. So I think it's a matchup that Baltimore were going to be a little bit too much for Washington at this stage, but it seemed to be quite a competitive game. And
they definitely still kind of like ran them kind of pretty close. And just when I was speaking there about Eckler, so he had 9 attempts, only managed 21 yards, and for an average of 2.33 yards kind of thing. So it's like I think that maybe if they'd had Brian and Robinson in there, that they might have kind of had a little bit more from the rushing attacks. Even Daniels, he had 6 attempts for 22, and they were stopping him on the ground. Like in the air, still 24 completions on 35 attempts, 269 yards, 2 TDs, and still the QBR rating 118. So guy had a good game. I think Lamar, he was 20 of 26 and a QBR of 115 because he had that 1 interception as well as the TD that kind of knocked him back. But Daniels was still passing it fairly well, but they seemed to just kind of gum them up, or gum the Commanders' run game up completely.
The other thing, you made a point of talking about the key stats that made the difference here, and I think the one that really jumps out to me from this one is the third down efficiency. Baltimore 60%, so 6 times out of 10, facing third down, they're keeping drives going and just obviously keeping the ball in their hands, and just as importantly, out of Jaden Daniels' hands.
Yeah, no, that's it, and that bears out in the time of possession that I love talking about as well, because it's the Commanders had just under 24 minutes and Ravens just over 36. So it they were holding on to the ball, and they were kind of moving it, even though they were, Commanders did manage to get away. They had 0 turnovers, so no fumbles, no interceptions, so that's still a plus point in there. Kev, any thoughts on the Commanders and your division rivals? How do you think they take?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it a few times. We've done the season preview for our division, and we had a guest on who's a Commanders fan. And after listening to him, I was actually really excited to see how they go this season, because he was really optimistic. And I've got to say, I have enjoyed watching them. And I think that yesterday was a game that nobody expected them to win, myself included. But I thought that they made a really good fist of it, and I think going from where they've been the last couple of years, I think that that result, they shouldn't worry too much about the result. They should just focus on how they performed in a game that, like I said, nobody gave them a chance in. mean, coming up against Lamar and King Henry and Zay Flowers, came alive again. He's kind of burst back onto the scene. He seems to have been kind of struggling a bit early on this season after the highs of last year. But even Andrews again, who's been quite quiet at the beginning of this season. So everything just seemed to click for the Ravens. They were really up for that game. And yeah, the Commanders, they've done themselves proud.
Nope, yep, good thing. So obviously, game ended, Ravens won. And I think it is probably just that thing of it's a good measuring stick for the Commanders to see where they are. And they almost kept up. They could have been doing a bit more, if they'd kind of held on to the ball a little bit more or been able to convert those third downs, like Gav says. They probably could have done better, but I think they still need to come away from it feeling fairly happy. Now, going on from the Commanders and their rookie quarterback, we're heading off to New England for the Patriots against the Texans. And this we got to see, we've seen them in spots so far in games, but this was the first start for Drake May and the beginning of the Drake May era. Gav, what did you make of this one, or did you see it, kind of thing? What did you make of it?
I mean, I guess the big story on this one is, I mean, I will come back to Drake May, but obviously the Texans on the road just keep rolling. This was a game that you'd certainly expect them to win, but they won it comfortably. And if you want to be a contender, that's the kind of things you want to see. You don't want to just be scraping by in every situation. So I think for them to come out there, really make a statement was big. I guess obviously we saw Nico Collins went down previous week and gone to IR. So from the Texans' perspective, it's okay, well, who's going to step up? And actually saw multiple contenders in that position. Tank Dell getting the open touchdown for the Texans, and Joe Mixon, a man that you know well from Cincinnati, Stu, had an excellent game as well, just to key the Texans and really, I guess, outpace the Patriots earlier on. I think the Patriots actually had an interception in the end zone. Otherwise, it could have been even more comfortable for the Texans.
Yeah.
But Drake May, I think, is a good one to come back to, because from my perspective as a Giants fan, he's probably the quarterback that I was looking at in the mocks and starting to think, well, maybe either he slips to us, maybe we trade up for him. You know that Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, probably going to be gone to that point. And I'm actually quite happy, with what Billy Neighbours is showing, but obviously the quarterback position remains a question. And a lot of people were really down in Drake May, but again, we've got to recognise, like we said already, he's a rookie quarterback coming into the league. It is a jump in any situation. And whereas the Bears have got a number of pieces in place, and actually Washington themselves have been doing a lot to turn it around, the Patriots are a dumpster fire. They've obviously moved on from the Belichick era. They have a new coaching, but kind of from the Belichick coaching tree, defensive-minded coach as well. So I don't think it's been the best landing spot for Drake May. I think it's fair to say. But the fact that he's come out and had that opportunity against the Texans to make some plays, he's threw 3 fantastic touchdowns. It's a real positive sign. And a lot was made of the fact that actually they were going to sit him for the start of the season and put Jacoby Brissett in. But that to me feels like it's been the right call, just to give him a bit of confidence, not get beaten up like we've seen with the likes of Bryce Young at the Panthers, being an example. So I don't think we're going to get to January and the honours and be talking about Drake May in the Rookie of the Year conversation, but I think there's absolutely hope for him. It's just a case of, with the talent that's around him, I'm not expecting that much from him this year, but it was a good start against what you would expect to be playoff caliber opposition.
Yep, for sure. Kev, you obviously have had years of good O-line play in the Eagles, and that's one thing the Pats they're obviously struggling with as well. I don't know what do you think the Pats need to do kind of moving forward, on that front, or Is there anybody they can bring in, or should they bother, or just wait for the draft?
I mean, that's a really good question. I'm not so sure. I think they certainly need to look at trying to draft pieces to. If they think May is their franchise QB and that's who they're going to go with, then they're certainly going to need to draft some pieces to help them, or try and go out and trade or look in free agency. But for me, I actually thought that this was maybe. I think the preview crew touched on it. It's maybe a game too early to bring me in as the starter. The Patriots defense can keep them in games. So, against a lot of teams, those 3 touchdown passes that he threw that like you said were excellent. They would have had a chance of maybe getting them something out of the game, but coming up against the Texans the way they're playing right now, they were on a hiding to nothing. The fact that they've lost Nico Collins, and then up pops Tank Dell, who again had a fantastic season last year. He's been a bit quieter this year now that they've got Stephon Diggs, but again, you talk about next man up mentality, and Texans have that in abundance. So yeah, I think that he'll feel good about getting that game under his belt, May. And if they roll with him the rest of the season, even in the shape that they're in just now, I think he'll get a chance to pick up some wins, because their defense will usually keep them in games a bit better.
Yeah, I was maybe wondering, that's expectation management is perhaps one of the reasons to put May into a game like that, where you are coming up against what you would view as a contender. You're not expecting the Patriots to do much in that game. And actually, I think by throwing 3 touchdown passes, Drake May's probably exceeded expectations and can come out of a 20-point loss, but still on a positive note.
That's fair.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And so, yeah, just kind of putting a button on that game there. Like, it ended 41-21 to the Patriots, which is probably just about where most people would have imagined. Like, I definitely thought at least 2 scores of a difference. And yeah, it was nice to see Joe Mixon getting. He had 2 big games this season. Then he said they won the first week of the year, so that's abnormal. Normally, Joe Mixon has won like a 190-yard game and then doesn't really do all that much. So the Texans have cracked the code. Now moving on from that one, and we're moving to another high-scoring game. So the Bucs versus the Saints. So Tampa Bay, obviously, everybody in the Tampa Bay area. We just had a hurricane. Was it Milton? It's just rolled in like hot on the heels of Hurricane Helene. There's footage from the area. I don't know if you guys saw, but the baseball stadium where the Rays play, the roof was actually taken off that. The funny thing about that is that roof's actually designed to supposedly better withstand hurricanes and channel it, because it's more of a tent style rather than a solid dome. But just shows you how kind of tough it is. But the Bucs, they went in there with something to prove, try to do something for their home city. I guess Keith, I don't know if you saw any of this one, or if you have any thoughts, kind of thing, on the Bucs and the Saints kind of play.
No, I didn't see any of that one. Sorry.
I don't know. That's all good, kind of thing. Like, I mean, any thoughts so far on, like, Baker Mayfield? He did put up 325 yards of offense. He threw 4 touchdowns, but did throw 3 interceptions as well. So he has been playing pretty good this year. But any thoughts on Baker so far this season? Don't know if you want to jump in on that one, Gav.
Yeah, I think, this is probably, looking at this game, it's been one where Baker's really come out with his classic gunslinging style. 325 yards, 4 touchdowns, but at the same time 3 interceptions, which is amazing to think that actually in a game where your team scores 51 points, that there was still time for Baker to actually turn the ball over 3 times. But this was, I guess, what is interesting to me is this is a game where we kind of talk about, you're talking about Baker, But actually, one of the stories is the other quarterback in this game, Spencer Rattler, the rookie that came in for the Saints, filling in for Derek Carr, and he had a good start. I think he completed 10 of his first 13 passes, so which shows he did really well. And actually, after the Bucks got out to a hot start, New Orleans scored 27 points in that second quarter. The only problem from their perspective is that that's the only quarter that they scored any points in for the whole game. So it's a really tricky one to judge, because I think similar to how we talked about maybe the Seahawks not being as hot as we thought they would be at the after the start. I think everyone kind of realised with the Saints that, yeah, again, another one to face the Panthers early on, and they've beaten up in Dallas, who, as we've seen, they're not the only team to have done that already.
Don't worry, we're getting to Dallas.
There we go. But at the same time, it's not really a team that I'm wanting to skewer. You know, when you are down, when your starting quarterback does go down, and it's a rookie that's coming in place, you know, to still score 27 points is a good effort. And you do actually have to think that, you know, this really was an emotional win for the Buccaneers. They'd made the decision also to go out to New Orleans on the Tuesday of that week. So similar to how they actually talk about the London games as a chance for the team to really come together and bond. You've got to think that you kind of factor in that point that as much as a road game, they spend that extra time together, and now they have this point that they are playing for the city, much like we saw with the Saints, particularly after Katrina. I think that's just you do have to think that has powered them through in this instance, and it's a great win, and the Bucks are giving us a bit of competition in this NFC South.
Yeah, no, for sure. They've looked really good on the year, and like you're saying there with the competition kind of side of it, and also just them wanting to make that statement. They put up 20 points in the fourth quarter, and that's like, I know it was kind of close because of the 27 they conceded in the second quarter, but they really just seemed to go, you know what, we're screwing the nut here, and we're going to just do what, say, Celtic would do to Kilmarnock, and my beloved Kilmarnock in the SPL, where sometimes we're already beat. You can slow down maybe a little bit sometimes. You don't need to put 8 past us or make us down to it. But yeah, like Kev, you know, what did you, I guess on this side, like, sorry, there was one point I was looking for. It was one of Shaheed. He didn't really do so much receiving this time, but I don't know if you clocked his defensive contributions.
His punt return touchdown.
Right, well, he had the punt return touchdown, but then he also had 2 tackles.
Oh, I didn't clock that. No, I didn't see the tackles he was making. But yeah, I mean, he's an exciting player to watch. He's always a deep threat on offense, but then he showed with the punt return as well. He's dangerous, and yeah, I think the big difference in this game was Carr missing. The Saints have been pretty good the first few games of this season. I'm talking them up because they're one of the teams that we managed to get a win on. I think that Carr's a big miss. He flies under the radar quite a lot. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. I know that's not the case with yourself, Stu. You talk him up quite a bit. But yeah, they were always up against it, and like you say, with what's been going on in Florida, and particularly the Tampa Bay area, over this past couple of weeks, it really seems to have galvanised the Bucks and kind of given them a purpose. So it was a really difficult game, albeit at home, for the Saints.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, so game ended 51-27, so the highest overall scoring game in the week, and nice to see Tampa getting that win. Now moving on to the Colts at the Titans. So in this one you had Joe Flacco in at quarterback, him previously of the Browns, where he was actually much loved, and he kind of sort of saved their season and led them to the playoffs last year. he was up against Keith, not your Keith, other Keith from the podcast, his favourite, Will Levis and the Titans. So, Kev, I don't know if you want to kind of speak a bit about this one as well, just kind of lead us off.
Yeah, I mean, this game was a bit of a war of attrition, quite a grind. Not a great deal going on, but yeah, was Pollard really the big difference there?
Yep, 93 yards on 17 rush attempts, 5.471 yards per carry, and he had a touchdown, I think. So yeah, Pollard definitely had a good game for the Titans. Then the Colts side, yeah, Sermon, they were running the ball a lot with them, 18 attempts, but only made 29 yards. That's 1.6 yards per carry. So yeah, the Titans had that kind of, the rush side from it, but the Colts, I don't know what you thought there. I mean, again, it's more that down to Joe Flacco and his gunslinger nature, because he had a whole whack of guys that had receptions. Gav, I don't know if you want to speak a bit about Josh Downs, because he seems to have emerged.
I like to speak about Josh Downs, and a big part of it is fantasy. But actually, whether you're playing for fantasy points or actually just trying to find a win in the real world, Josh Downs has been a real difference maker since he came back from injury. So I believe actually since he returned from injury, he's actually tied he sort of joint first in the league for receptions since he's been back from injury. I think he's top 5 for targets as well. So I think we have seen that the Colts do have a number of weapons on the team. So I don't think it'd be fair just to single out Josh Downs, because actually you got Michael Pittman actually came into the game-winning touchdown grab in this one. Alec Pierce a bit quieter, but as we've seen in previous weeks, he's been a big threat as well. So when you've got multiple receivers and a veteran QB like Joe Flacco who can read the game, then it becomes a case of pick your poison from a defensive standpoint. And I guess the story that we do have to talk about, and apologies if it's negative, but if you have the Titans and your starting quarterback's thrown for 95 yards, you're never in a game. Sorry, Will.
Yeah, I mean, it's the interesting thing for me on that, like, because obviously Callahan, he came through, he was with the Bengals kind of most recently, and before that with the Rams, and I think he was with the Saints as well at one point. I want to say he worked with Drew Brees there, but his whole thing is that he's been a quarterback coach for much of his NFL career, then offensive, head offensive coach for the Bengals. He's worked with different quarterbacks and different styles of quarterbacks, and he always seems to have been able to get them to produce wherever he is. So now you're looking at what's happening with Will Levis, and that's the one thing that makes me. I don't like knocking rookies, and I do feel that sometimes they do just need that little bit extra time to develop. But we've not really seen the best Will Levis yet, have we, Keith? Kind of thing, or like from what we saw of him in college, and do you think it's coming?
He seems to have one absolute brain.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
not particularly. Not particularly. You don't see any. Well, from what I've seen this season, he's tried. There's one, and maybe taking the simpler option, like throw it away or whatever like that, and he maybe isn't learning from those mistakes. And this time he absolutely crushed a ball boy who had to get carted off.
So he did.
I mean, I'm smiling, but that's not funny at all, kind of thing. But you said it right at the start there when you said he just seems to have at least one brain fart per game. Like I'd say is completely correct. And I wonder how much of it is. It's almost kind of like the Bryce Young situation again, where how much of this is, of his own making, and how much of it is just his confidence is shot, kind of thing. I don't know. I'd maybe be looking at benching him for a bit again and going for another option. But unfortunately, the Titans don't have an Andy Dalton, who, as much as he's maybe not the best quarterback that's ever lived, but he's definitely serviceable and he knows where to move the ball to and how to produce his reads.
I guess the other thing, Stu, is as much as it's not been great from Will Levis, this was a close game in several metrics. Actually, both teams only had one turnover.
Yeah.
Neither team registered a sack, and in fact, there was only, it was pretty much 50-50 for time of possession. But as we've been banging on about in this one, penalties, 5 for the Colts, 11 for the Titans. And, when you are struggling to get your offense going, as it is, the last thing you want to be doing is marching yourself backwards or giving yards to the other team.
Yeah, yes, it's the discipline thing as well, kind of thing. So I guess it goes beyond Will Levis, so we can't just pin it on him, which is a good thing. We shouldn't be doing that with rookies. But so this game ended 2017, and then we'll move on to another game where there was a bit of drama on the sideline right at the start of the game, and I had a few folks worried, myself included, because I was kind of watching this as it was going on. The Chargers at the Broncos. And obviously what I'm alluding to is the incident with Harbaugh that happened at the start, and he seemed to be in great spirits and was joking away about it at the end of it, which was good to see. But it's obviously kind of worrying whenever somebody's talking about having heart issues at the side of the field. So Kev, did you see much of this one, and did you see the incident with Harbaugh?
I didn't. I didn't see any of that game, and I didn't know about the incident with Harbaugh until you've just brought it up. So that's a bit.
Yes, he had like an episode where he had arrhythmia of the heart on the side of the pitch. So he said he knew that there was something going on, so he decided just to take himself to the blue tent, and then from the blue tent he then went backstage back to the dressing room. Yeah, but then his brother actually, he saw it was happening. He was in a press conference after the Ravens game, and he saw it was happening, and he left. He was answering questions. He immediately left the press conference to go and find out what was happening with his brother. So that was the thing that made it even more kind of a bit frightening. But he re-emerged, and on that first drive, with him absent, the Chargers did manage to kick a field goal. By the way, I think we should have went for it in the 4th down, but they still get the points, and I guess it doesn't matter in the end. But anywho, Gav, did you see this one?
Yeah, I mean, I coming back from Edinburgh, I actually managed to catch a lot more of the late window, and it's funny because I guess this is one of your classic. This is one of your classic late games where it's not, it's perhaps not the most prestigious matchups, but obviously AFC West is going to fit into those late games, and I think the Chargers in particular are a really interesting case because they are actually a team that, despite Harbaugh coming in, they do fly a wee bit under the radar. And all of a sudden, they've very sneakily got themselves, admittedly at a very early stage, into a winning record, 3-2. And one of those losses was, in fact, the Chiefs. What really jumped out to me in this one is, despite all that uncertainty with what's happened with Harbaugh, 20-0 up at half.
Yeah,
they came out fast in this one, and to be fair and to give credit to the Broncos, they came back in this one. Bo Nix threw an absolute dime to Cortland Sutton late on in the game. That's one that, if you've not seen it, you really need to check out. So in the West, we're always going to be talking about the Chiefs because they're winning, and the Raiders because, again, they're just a dumpster fire soap opera team.
Yeah.
We've actually got a couple of teams here that are sort of quietly ticking along, and I think in both their cases exceeding expectations. And it's going to be interesting to watch them down the stretch. I'm not necessarily saying that they're going to be in the playoff picture, but I think they're both sides that can make life difficult for other sides.
I was going to say, you know what, Gav? They were both in the playoff picture prior to this game starting. It's the thing. So, I'm not saying they're going to make it. It's maybe not like an NFC North situation where all 4 teams have winning records, and who knows what will happen there, kind of thing in the long run. But yeah, they've both been doing what they need to do, and it's the same thing. It's like beating what's in front of them, but obviously they came up against each other. But for me, the difference, I guess, that I kind of saw was, even with Harbaugh missing time, it's maybe just the play calling from the Chargers, because it wasn't exciting, but they just kind of did what they had to do to just keep the ball moving and also hold on to that ball. So again, coming back to my favourite thing, time of possession. the Chargers, they were close to 38 minutes. It's like, you know, what, like over 37 minutes time of possession. So it's like they've had it for 2/3 of the game. So, you know, kind of lends itself to, you can see exactly why they, you know, were moving towards victory. And again, that other stat we like talking a lot about, penalties. So 7-3. So Broncos had 7 penalties, Chargers had 3. So that's sort of the difference in there. But yeah, you know, we don't really need to kind of stay on this game too long because it wasn't really all that much. Probably the most exciting thing was the Harbaugh incident, and it was good to see him, you know, giving the press conference and joking away about it and saying he's completely fine at the end. And it's apparently something that happens to him more often than you'd think. So hopefully he's looking after himself. But now we're going from one kind of, I guess, well, that was a little bit of drama with Harbaugh to another team that loves drama, as you were talking about there. The Raiders. So the Raiders were hosting the much hated by some people Steelers in Las Vegas. This one now, Keith, like so far, you know, they obviously the Steelers, they have a quarterback that should be kind of near and dear to your own heart. Like he was in Chicago for a few years, and I sort of kind of, you know, felt like it was one of those where nobody really ever knew, is like, is he good, or is it just the Bears are dragging him down by not having an O-line at this point? Like, what's going on? Is he going to go to Pittsburgh and stumble? What did you make of Justin Fields, or what have you made of him this year so far?
I do pay close attention because I think he was a really popular guy in Chicago. I love watching him play. He has his limitations. There was obviously a really polarising debate between him and his fans and the Caleb Williams fans. I think there's absolutely no doubt the Bears have done the right thing. But I think Justin Fields is an effective NFL quarterback. Whether or not he really does enough to be a long-term starter at Pittsburgh, I'm not sure. His running seems to be curtailed a little bit. He doesn't quite have that. I don't know if it's been drilled into him because he's got to try and go through his progressions a bit more, and he just doesn't take off. But it doesn't quite seem to have that dynamic. He could take it for a touchdown at any point. He doesn't really look like that kind of guy for Pittsburgh. But he's still quietly effective. He can throw some amazing passes, and yet he can still miss some really easy ones as well. So I'm sure he's a little bit frustrating, but he probably suits Pittsburgh's style of play. And from what I can gather, he seems to be really popular with the players, which isn't really surprising. And he'll be popular probably in the city as well. He's that kind of character. So I just hope for all the best for him, and it's great to see him winning with the Steelers.
No,
how do you reconcile hoping for the best for him but wanting the Steelers to lose?
I don't really want the Steelers to lose.
See, he's not biased like me. Like he's no.
No.
Yeah, if you kind of maybe have that old Eagles Steelers. They're also kind of fairly close in geography as well. There's that old hatred from back in the day as well. But Kev, coming to you though, on the other side of the ball, with another change of quarterback for the Raiders there, they've been running with Minshew before. What did you make of seeing Aidan O'Connell in there again? I mean, he was certainly chucking it, trying to get something going. But what did you make of him?
Yeah, I mean, he's come in and done all right a couple of different occasions over the last couple of seasons, but again, that's a tough game to put him into, against a really good defense, and he struggled. I think, looking at the Steelers in that game, they just ran all over the Raiders. If it wasn't Justin Fields scrambling for touchdowns, then you had Najee Harris absolutely running through them. I think the Raiders, like you said, are just about a dumpster fire right now. I feel sorry for any quarterback stepping in to try and get them wins at the minute, because they're just not good.
Yeah, I think it's also, you talked with obviously we talked with Keith Spears earlier about how you put the pieces in place to support your quarterback. And actually, what we saw in this game is a perfect example that Justin Fields didn't have to do that much because, as Kev said, he's supported by Najee Harris, because you've got TJ Watt forcing 2 fumbles. On the other side, if you actually look at from the Raiders' perspective, what's worrying me is not the change of quarterback, but actually the fact that you've only racked up 57 rushing yards, and even at that, it was the running backs that's coughing up the ball, not the quarterback. Mm-hmm. So how can you expect your backup quarterback to be effective when you really can't depend on the run game at all?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I do think, looking at the Raiders, I do think they're already into that phase of they should probably start looking at trading away, especially, all the chat's been around Devontae Adams, but I wonder, some of the smoke has been maybe Devontae Adams goes to the Steelers, because they were very, as much as everyone's talking about the reunion with Aaron Rodgers at the Jets, or potentially with Derek Carr at the Saints, the Steelers were very, very loud and proud about kind of trying to go for Ayuk during the summer there. So you'd think that maybe that's something they would look at to try and give Justin Fields another one of those pieces to add to the armory and move forward. But yeah, Raiders, it's the carnival continues. They lost 32-13, so we can enjoy some more excitement with the Raiders next week. Now, moving on to another absolute clown show, it is the Cowboys' defence. So let's talk about the mighty Detroit Lions and their match, or can we even call it a match? Their absolute beatdown of the Dallas Cowboys. Sorry, Dan, for wherever you're watching, but we're probably going to be unloading a little bit here. Who wants to lead us off here? I don't know who saw this one. I mean, I watched it and it was highly enjoyable. I've got nothing against the Cowboys, but I do like the Lions.
See rivals here, Kev. Do you want this first?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't stay up for it, but I did certainly catch the highlights when I saw the score, because I knew I was going to enjoy it, and I did. And again, well, I think everything just went right for the Lions in this game. They were chucking the ball through the air, but they were getting a lot of joy with the run game as well. And yeah, seeing Dak chucking interceptions was fun. The really worrying thing, I think, for a Cowboys perspective is that this is starting to happen a bit more frequently. These sorts of blowout losses at home. You can have your say now, Gav.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's first of all just pour one out for Jerry Jones, who I think was his 82nd birthday yesterday.
And he's all in.
Yeah, and wow, what a way to celebrate. I mean, I think even the sports networks, they were quite happy putting up the reaction shots from his face in the crowd, and he was not looking happy. To be fair, he did speak to the media after the game, but about taking accountability. He is the owner, so he will take ownership for the situation. I think Mike McCarthy is someone that I think we'd all identified after that blowout loss in the playoffs last year, was absolutely in the hot seat going into the season, and having seen now 2 big losses in both of those at home to the Saints, who are not, I don't think anyone thinks is a particularly great team. Okay, the Lions, a Super Bowl pick, but that's twice now that Dallas have been absolutely embarrassed at home by the opponents. There's no way of sugarcoating that. And actually, I think the Ravens game, if you think about it again, they came back in that one, but they were getting demolished in Dallas.
I was going to say that was one of those kind of weird ones where they came back, but it was kind of against all the Ravens' backups. So there was never any real danger that the Ravens were going to let that game actually slip. So I mean, really, if you think about it, the Cowboys have been blown out a good few times this season, because I would count that Ravens game as one of those. Keith, or just going to Keith here, do you think that McCarthy is on the hottest of the hot seats at this moment in time, or is someone else possibly more up there?
No, no, probably not, because I think Jones has been pretty emphatic that he's not going to fire him during the season.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's more likely to be one or two that might go during the season. But I think beyond this season, I can't see him staying on unless something miraculous turns around for Dallas. He probably should have been gone at the end of last season, to be fair.
Yeah. I'd agree, and I mean I also would agree with that take too. I do think that maybe the Jags might make a move first, or possibly we'll see what goes on with all the stuff with going back to the Browns again, because I love bashing them. As good as Stefanski has been as a coach, like, and even I'll say that, I do think if he's the one that seems to be publicly taking the fall guy stance for the Watson chat, because he's very public today saying, nope, he's my guy, I'm playing him, and I talk to Barry all the time and he lets me make all the football decisions. I'm going, well, this sounds like you're covering for the GM and for the owners in this situation. So anyway, my point is that I feel like
that's where he would lose the locker room as well, though, isn't it? Because the players know that that's not really coming from him.
Yeah. And then if the coach isn't, then you're in that situation where if you're a player, the coach is meant to be your guy, and he's the guy that's your shield as a squad, or the go-between between the GM and the president.
Yeah.
And the owners. Like, the coach is meant to be more on your side than anybody else's. So yeah. But
the one thing I would say as well for Dallas is, I was watching some of the highlight plays of the highlight reel that the NFL puts out as well for this week, and the only person that we're really seeing appearing from a Dallas perspective in that particular compilation was Turpin, or not Turpin, sorry, Tolbert, I think, was doing the kick returns, I think obviously
Turpin's the kick returner, so it's Turpin.
Sorry, well, it was Turpin. Apologies. I think when you're seeing two kick returns, that's great, but let's not forget that when you're conceding 47 points in the game, you're getting plenty of opportunities to run them back. But we are spending a lot of time on Dallas, and I think actually we probably should bring this one back round to the Lions, because the Cowboys have always been a bit of a bogey side for the Lions at times. Prior to last season, they tended to sometimes get like wild card games against the Cowboys and just fall a wee bit short. And I think this is one that, no matter how bad things are in Dallas, people are always fascinated by the Cowboys. They get the prime time slots and they get to go out and make a big, big statement win in prime time in the way that they did. They did it with swagger as well. If you look at the throws that Jared Goff was making, the touchdown pass and the triple reverse that ended up with it was a thing of beauty. And even, again, talking about our key stats, they were averaging 7 yards per play. So in every facet of the offensive game, Detroit were demolishing the Cowboys. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, Dak had his struggles, but the Lions offense was picking them to pieces on that side as well. I guess maybe leave that on is just the injury that we should probably
I was just going to touch on that, or just kind of go to Kev there and just say, like, obviously the Lions is something that was touched on before in the preview show going into this week, was like maybe one place you can get to the Lions is the secondary. So we saw the return of Brian Branch this week, and he made some big plays. I don't know if you spotted any of those in the highlights, Kev, or not.
Yeah.
And then obviously get to he's back, but the second part of it is they're now missing probably one of their main kind of game breakers or game wreckers in Aiden Hutchinson after that horror injury. Which, do not go and watch it, ladies and gentlemen. Like, I've seen it. You do not need to watch it. Like, it's.
Yeah. I'm glad to say it wasn't part of the highlights package I watched. I've heard a lot of discussions about it in the group chats and whatnot, and I'm not going to go looking for it. But that's really bad news for them. But listen, if they keep playing like they played on offense last night, then they're probably still going to win a lot more games than they lose, even missing him. But yeah, it's maybe it's maybe a blow to their Super Bowl hopes, because teams win championships and whatnot, you know.
Yeah, certainly do. So, so this game ended 47-9. The only person getting points for the Cowboys is my favourite, Mr. Aubrey, the kicker. Love him. So moving from one beloved kicker of the podcast, we're going to go to the Falcons versus the Panthers in Irn-Cru. We'll talk about him a little bit in here as part of this, because Keith would never let us not you Keith, other Keith, would never let us pass him by. But yeah, so Falcons versus the Panthers, 38-20. Business as expected, Gav? Or, or was it a surprise? Falcons could put up so many points?
I think the end result was what we were expecting to see here, with the Falcons taking over or taking the win over a Panthers side that has, I guess, made some adjustments, but still has a number of deficiencies. But I think we do need to give credit to Carolina on this one, that they did keep it close. So I think it was an 18-point win in the end. It was 22-17 at the half.
Yeah.
Seeing it as Canadian Thanksgiving, I think we need to give a shout out to Chuba Hubbard, who again a solid contribution on the ground for the Panthers, and just keeping a bit of balance in that offense. But I think in the end that there's just more firepower on the Falcons side of the ball. Kirk Cousins, he has the weapons to spread it around. You can see Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney actually a bit quiet from his perspective, but he has a few bodies that can carry the can. Really, though, it was the run game that did the bulk of the damage here. And I mean, we talked about this in the preview crew about Bijan Robinson not really being that go-to guy on the offense. He did log 2 touchdowns, but was actually outgained by Tyler Algier, who had 105 yards. So I think it's not really to say that one or the other of those guys is winning the contest, but that's a perfect situation when you're Kirk Cousins, that you have 2 backs that can take the load off your game, and you've got multiple threats to throw to. So I think all in all, very much what we'd expected, but it's going to be a long season for the Panthers. There's no doubt about it, but they were competitive for the most part, so let's give some credit there.
Yeah, Keith, did you see any of this one as well? And did you, I guess I was just going to kind of touch a bit on the Falcons' defense, because the Bears, you're well known for your defense. What are you making of the Falcons' defense so far this year?
I really haven't seen much of them, to be honest. I didn't see any of that game. Haven't seen any of the other games, so I wouldn't really be able to pass judgment. Somebody else can maybe do that.
Yeah, no, all good. You might be seeing them in the playoffs though, eventually, if the Bears keep doing their thing, because it looks like the Falcons are going to be in there. So that could be an exciting one for the future.
I like seeing Darnell Mooney doing well.
Yeah,
I always like seeing ex-Bears players that you really liked and hope that they do well. It's nice to see David Montgomery is a beast in Detroit. Love watching him run. I love his style. Love the way he was getting his shirt ripped and still broke the tackles yesterday. And Darnell Mooney's playing really well in Atlanta as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's good. Kev, you get any thoughts kind of thing on Falcons on the D side of the ball for them?
Again, I've not really seen much of them this season either. What I have seen is highlights of their offensive play, and on the offensive side of the ball, they're really they're really starting to heat up, and they look like a real threat. What I was thinking was, if their defense, is legit, then they've got a real chance of going a long way. I think they're a dark horse, but I must be honest, I'm not entirely sure how hot their defense is.
Yeah, well, I'm a fan. That's why I keep trying to get somebody to talk about it here. I do love a bit of Jesse Bates kind of thing because of his time in the Bengals. I think he is like one of the top 5 safeties in the league, if not top 3. I won't say he's the best, but like I love the guy kind of thing. So it's good to see him doing well. But anyway, that's enough. Falcons, Panthers. Falcons won that one in the end, 38-20. And let's get to the main event of the weekend and the final game that we're going to be talking about. The Bengals headed to the Big Apple on Sunday night for Sunday Night Football. This was an absolute clash of the Titans. Both teams absolutely hammering in the standings so far, and obviously playing great and all that. So we all knew that it was going to be a massive scoring game. Or well, at least for me, I thought the Bengals might actually, all jokes aside, I thought we might put up a lot of points, but I also expected the Giants to do what everyone else has done and put up at least 20 points on us, if not more. And that is not how it turned out. Gav, take it away. I'll let you start.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So let's be honest, Giants didn't get the job done. However, I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking, actually, Giants had been moving the ball pretty well against the Seahawks in particular, and I think over the last several weeks that the play calling has been such that Daniel Jones has been asked to do what he does best. Even if it is the shorter completions, his completion percentage has been way up the last few weeks. And that's even with the loss of Malik Neighbours to concussion protocol. And what we saw really was just, I guess, a regression to what we've seen in last season. Certainly, really, really disappointing showing in terms of the passing game. I do think we probably need to give a bit of credit though to the rookie Tyrone Tracy at running back, who, if you just purely look at his running stats, he only logged 50 yards, but actually he had another 57 through the passing game. And so now we do have someone in that position who, okay, he's not the generational talent that Saquon is touted as being, but he is keeping the ball moving. We did have a couple of fourth down conversions that kept us alive in some of the drives. But what's obviously worrying me is we're seeing a few games now where the Giants have really struggled to put points on the board. Seattle was a great showing, but prior to that, we had the game at home again in prime time Thursday night football for the Cowboys, 5 field goals, and that's it. Did not find the end zone at all. And another theme kind of harking back to week 2, where a fellow Scotsman, Graham Gano, went down. The Giants struggled with the kicking game, and actually it was Joseph who's come in at kicker, shanked both of his attempts in this one. And I think it's fair to say that when we've got kickers like Koo and also Fairbairn nailing these, high 50-yard field goals, Aubrey, could probably kick from 70, and we've, 47 yards now has almost become a chip shot in the NFL. And even with those 2 misses, the Giants still lose, but it does change the dynamic of the game, and we saw that late on, where actually it's I think 4th and 3 from the 30-yard line. You think ordinarily you could bring a kicker in and actually narrow the gap. And instead, obviously, Bengals drive the other way, get the dagger touchdown with the Canadian man of the hour, Chase Brown.
Yeah, it was nice to see him do that when I just kind of finished eating my Thanksgiving dinner last night as well. So it was lovely to see Chase Brown getting that touchdown kind of thing. Because that's the thing is, like, looking at the game stats for it, like, again, it's like Giants had more of the ball, and this, despite like the year the Bengals have been having so far, we've been like leaning heavily on the offense, and we can do that. We have Joe Burrow, we have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins is back, and he actually had a reasonable game. But this game, the offense for us absolutely sputtered. Like, it's I've not seen it that bad for almost the entire Joe Burrow. Like maybe the Patriots game at the start of this season. But yeah, like I think I saw a stat as well. Like the Bengals, this was the first time in 75 games where we've not allowed more than 10 points. scored on us, and I think that was I can't remember when I saw it earlier on, but I think we were only like maybe 2 or 3 games away from setting like the all-time record for most games conceding more than 10 points in a row. Something like that. So it's kind of dangerous territory to be in, and as bad as our defence has been, it was actually really good to see that was the side of the ball. That was what I think won us this match last night. Was for once Lou Anarumo and the guys in D were the ones that were actually kind of keeping us or giving us chances to get the ball back, because our offense was getting nothing going kind of thing for a lot of the time, or that's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked with the Giants. I think I try not to go hard on Daniel Jones, because I think he's not necessarily had the best situation when he came in 4 years ago. He's had a carousel of no-name wide receivers. He's not had the best defensive line play to support him. But now, again, kind of a theme in this week's pod, you talk about the pieces that you put in around your quarterback. The Giants do have a defense that will keep this team in games. They have Malik Neighbors, who is going to be an elite wide receiver one. And, Tyrone Tracy, I'm not saying again that he's going to be a Hall of Fame running back, but he does seem to be someone that serves. The O-line's been improved. I rate Brian Daboll as a coach. I know I've kind of talked about some deficiencies in special teams, but I guess the excuses are starting to disappear for Daniel Jones. The pieces are in play now, and we talked about guaranteed money for quarterbacks. The Giants did put Jones in a 4-year deal, but as we've talked about before, there's a nice exit point coming up after this season. This is essentially a contract year for him in terms of performance. And I think in my mind, I was always thinking, well, that's going to spur him on and try and secure his place. The Giants are not a team known for making dramatic moves. So someone had actually suggested the scenario with, obviously, you got a rookie contract, a rookie quarterback coming in rookie money. Daniel Jones feels like a guy that you could keep around whilst you draft a quarterback. Maybe it's just for a year, maybe it's just for a few games. He's not necessarily gone, but I think we're definitely seeing that. I feel that there's going to be a transition in that position in New York.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point kind of thing. Like, I think Daniel Jones that's actually a good kind of thing to think about. Is like, well, if you did draft someone, and depending how long they take to develop, you do actually have that extra year of Danny Dimes. Like, if you want to keep him, and if your new guy comes in and does well, you can always trade him. Because there's always somebody getting injured, and But anyway, like, I'm glad we won. I'm happy you lost, Gav. Sorry, but so we've kind of come towards the end. The last game we've got, but hasn't happened yet. It will be happening in a few hours here. The Bills versus the Jets. I know we don't usually do this on the review crew, but it's kind of left to the preview. But Keith, how do you think that's going to go? To maybe if you want to give a kind of brief prediction, how you think that's going to go?
Bills by 17.
Ooh, big victory there. Kev, what do you think?
Yeah, I think something similar. Having watched the Jets in London, I think there's something off. And I know they've sacked the coach, but I think the quarterback's the problem. And
there you go. There's something off, and I'll say exactly what it is.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'd even go as far as 20 points to the Bills.
There, mate. Gav.
So that I think in dark times I like to turn to the Bills as a source of comfort and Josh Allen. However, and I don't say this just to be contrarian, I feel this is a big banana skin game for the Bills. There's just something that sticks in my head that the Jets did have a disaster in London. There's no getting away from that. The coach is obviously gone, and I agree on paper. I would expect the Bills to win this game, but there's just something about this Monday Night Football. It's in New York. I'm going to say Jets by 6. I just have a really bad feeling about this, thinking of this from a Bills standpoint.
That's something. That's something's probably the Jets D, because they are legit normally, especially at home. But no, Josh Allen he'll roll.
I mean, I have a few Sauce Gardner shares in some of my leagues. I mean, if they do step up, I'd like to see it's because he gets a bunch of interceptions. No, I'm going to also go the same way as Keith and Kev here. I'll maybe split the difference a little bit, and I'll say Bills by 10. But I do think it's going to be more than a score. I know Josh Allen doesn't have the weapon. Diggs is gone, and I realise that we all thought heading into this season, the Bills are kind of rebuilding on the fly. They might drop off a little bit, but one game aside where they lost kind of pretty decently, they look as if Josh Allen is he's going to be in that conversation for MVP at the end of this year, I think. I can say that, even though it should be Joe Burrows, but, maybe Caleb Williams comes out of nowhere and gets Rookie of the Year and MVP, Keith. What do you think of that? But
you never know.
Stranger things like that. But anyway, thanks for joining on this as we made it through all the games, kind of thing. It was a fantastic week of football, and it was great chatting to you all. We have been the Gridiron Crew, and we'll get you through to a special crew, I guess, will be coming soon next, Gav. But until then, or Gav, you were going to say something there?
No, not at all. I think we'll be revealing details of who we have been speaking to on socials throughout the week. But yeah, we'll be dropping something close to the weekend, so look out for that. And it's been a pleasure being on tonight.
Yep, thanks for having you, Kev. Great chatting to you as well. Hopefully have a good week and all that, and we'll be chatting soon.
Yep, you too. I missed you, Stu. It's been a while, so thanks for coming on tonight.
Yep, host. Catch up. Keith, it's been great to actually chat to you. I've never seen you in the group chat so far. I think this is the first time we've actually had a face-to-face. I'll expect you to do some more Kilmarnock drawings on your Fitbit tweets in the future.
Who have they got this weekend?
I don't actually know. I should probably check that.
Oh dear.
Kilmarnock, who are we playing? Because we were this the other day. I'm just getting it up right now. The other thing you need to do is you need to get into the CFL. That's where I'll be.
Oh no!
Bringing you next.
Oh no!
So who are we playing this week? It's only going back to. Google's failing me. I don't know who we're playing. It'll be somebody.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. Hopefully we do better than draw, because that's what we see.
Is it not Rangers actually? No.
What, somebody crap then?
It is, isn't it? It's on Sunday.
It's on Sunday.
It's on Sunday.
Midday Sunday.
Okay,
yeah.
Hopefully we win that one, and then I can have a super happy day with the Bengals winning against the Browns and Kelly beating Rangers.
There is a thing I would track. Well, I wouldn't necessarily know for certain, but since I'm an Aberdeen supporter as well, Aberdeen and the Bears winning on the same weekend is such a rarity in recent years, and it happened 2 weeks ago, and then last week they both won on the same day. Since the Aberdeen game was moved to a Sunday, and that never happens. So when both your teams win on a Sunday, that's a good feeling.
The sky hasn't fallen yet.
Yeah, not yet. But anyways, we should probably wrap this up now. But thanks everybody on. We've been the review crew, the Gridiron Crew. Remember to check out the tickets for the Watch Along Party at Committee Room number 9 as well. So just check out all our social medias, give us a follow, like, and all that, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
There you go. Good job, guys.
Good. Yeah, I was just ending the Oh well, Keith's off. I feel bad.
We're still live, Stu.
Live. Let's try to end it there. I'd already hit end stream. That's all right. Chaos.